They don't tell you that 90 feels like a long afternoon that went by in 5 minutes. My name is Arthur. I am 90 years old. Most of my friends are gone. My wife, Martha, has been resting in the garden of St. Michael's Church for 12 years now. When you get to my age, you spend a lot of time looking at the walls. But I'm not looking at the paint. I'm looking at the ghosts of the choices I made. If you are under 50, hell, even if you're 70, you probably feel like you are in the heat of the battle. You are tired. Bone tired. You are chasing something. A bigger house, a better title, a stable future for your kids. You think you are being responsible. You think you're doing what a good man or woman does. But I'm standing at the finish line, looking back at you through 80 years of hindsight, and I have to scream it because I can't let you make the same mistake I did. There is one thing you are doing right now, one specific habit, one pattern of thinking, that is going to rot your spirit before you even reach retirement. It will hollow you out, make you a stranger in your own home, turn your greatest achievements into your deepest regrets. Stop waiting for the big life. Let me tell you what that cost me. And I promise you, by the end of this story, you'll never look at your calendar the same way again. I was born in 1935. The Great Depression was still fresh in my father's memory. He worked in a steel mill for 42 years, came home with burns on his arms and dust in his lungs. He told me one thing over and over. Arthur, a man's worth is in his ability to provide. Everything else is decoration. I believed him. So when I graduated in 1957, I did what every ambitious young man did. I put on a suit. I got a job at Morrison & Fletcher, a mid-size accounting firm. I was going to be someone. I was going to give my future family what my father couldn't give us: security, abundance, options. I met Martha in 1959 at a church social. She had this laugh. God, it sounded like bells. She worked as a nurse, night shifts mostly, and when she smiled at me, I felt like I'd won something. We got married in 1961. I was 26. She was 23. We had nothing but a tiny apartment and a secondhand radio. But we were there. You understand? We were present in our own lives. I remember one Saturday morning, must have been 1962, we slept in until noon. When we woke up, Martha located at me and said, "We don't have any plans today. What should we do?" And I said, "Absolutely nothing." So we stayed in bed, talked about dreams, made love, ate cereal for dinner. It was perfect. I didn't know it then, but that was the last time I would ever do nothing with her for 40 years. Because the next Monday, my boss called me into his office and told me I was being considered for junior partner. More money, more responsibility, more future. And I thought, this is it. This is how I become the man Martha deserves. That was the day I started living in the after. I want you to imagine something with me. Close your eyes if you're not driving. Picture your life as a pyramid. At the very top, the peak, is this glowing, perfect version of your future. In that future, you have time. You have money. You have freedom. You've made it. And in that magical place, you'll finally do all the things you keep putting off. You'll travel. You'll write that book. You'll spend real time with your kids. You'll learn to paint, or play guitar, or just breathe. That's the peak. But here's what they don't tell you about pyramids. You spend your entire life climbing toward the top, and the base, where you actually live, gets smaller and smaller. Every choice you make to get to that peak means sacrificing a piece of the foundation. I spent 40 years climbing. I made junior partner in 1965. I told Martha, 5 more years of this pace, baby, and then we'll buy that house you want. The one with the big kitchen. Senior partner in 1972. I told her, just a few more years, and we'll take that trip to Italy you keep talking about. Managing partner in 1981. By then, we had 2 kids, Sarah, born in 1966, and Michael, born in 1969. I missed Sarah's first steps because I was in a client meeting. I missed Michael's first words because I was on a business trip to Chicago. But I told myself I was building something for them. I was securing their future. You know what the most dangerous lie you can tell yourself is? I'm doing this for them. Because it lets you betray the people you love while feeling like a hero. I worked 60, sometimes 70 hours a week. I'd come home at 9 p.m., and Sarah would be asleep. Martha would have saved me dinner. It would be cold. She'd warm it up, sit with me while I ate, ask me about my day. And I'd be so exhausted, I'd barely respond. One night, I think Sarah was about 7, she came down the stairs in her little pink nightgown. It was past her bedtime. She was holding a drawing she'd made at school. It was our family, for stick figures holding hands. She said, "Daddy, look what I made for you." I was reviewing a contract. A big one. $250,000 client. I didn't even look up. I said, "Not now, sweetheart. Daddy is working for our future. Go back to bed." She went back upstairs. Martha took the drawing from her little hands and pinned it to the refrigerator. I finished the contract at 2 a.m. I don't even remember the client's name now, but I remember the look on Sarah's face. The thing about living in the after is that the people around you are living in the now. And eventually, they stop waiting for you to join them. Sarah's 10th birthday. I promised her I'd be there. We were going to go to the zoo. Martha had planned it for weeks. The night before, a client emergency came up. I told Martha, I'll make it up to her. We'll do something even bigger next year. You know what Sarah said? She didn't cry. She just looked at me and said, "It's okay, Daddy. I understand." 10 years old, and she already understood that her father's work was more important than her birthday. What kind of lesson is that to teach a child? Michael was quieter. He stopped expecting me to show up to his baseball games after the third one I missed. By the time he was in high school, when Martha would ask him if he wanted me to come to something, he'd just shrug and say, "He's busy." I thought I had time to fix it. I thought, when I retire, I'll be the dad I should have been. We'll reconnect. I'll make it right. But here's what nobody tells you. Relationships aren't bank accounts. You can't just make a big deposit at the end and expect everything to balance out. Every missed moment is a brick. And eventually, you've built a wall so high, you can't see over it anymore. By the time Michael graduated college, he moved to Oregon. I barely hear from him now. He has his own family. 2 kids I've met 3 times. Sarah stayed closer, geographically. She lives 40 minutes away. But we might as well be on different planets. We have lunch once a month. We talk about the weather. She asks about my health. I ask about her job. It's polite. It's cordial. It's the conversation of 2 strangers who share a last name. And the worst part? I can see myself in her eyes. She works 60 hours a week. She tells her kids, "Mommy's building a better future for you." I watch her climbing the same pyramid, and I can't stop her. Because how do you tell your daughter that everything you taught her about success was a lie? I finally retired in 2002. I was 67. Martha was 65. We had more money than we'd ever need. The mortgage was paid off. The kids were settled. I walked into our house on my first day of retirement, and I said, "Okay, honey, we did it. Now we can start living." She was sitting in the garden, reading a book. She looked up at me with this expression I'd never seen before. It wasn't angry. It was just tired. She said, "Arthur, I've been living. You've been preparing to live. There's a difference." I didn't understand what she meant. I thought I'd just bought us the freedom to do everything we'd ever dreamed of. I pulled out a list. I'd actually made a list of all the things we were going to do. Italy. That cabin by the lake. A cross-country road trip. She listened to my list. And when I finished, she just said, "Okay, Arthur, let's start with Italy." We booked the trip for spring of 2003. Martha started having headaches in February. By March, we knew it was cancer. Glioblastoma. The doctors gave her 6 months to a year. We never made it to Italy. I sat by her hospital bed every single day for 5 months. I held her hand. I read to her. I told her stories about our early days, when we used to do nothing together and it felt like everything. One afternoon, she was having a good day. She was lucid, and she looked at me with those beautiful, tired eyes and said, "Arthur, do you remember that Saturday when we stayed in bed all day?" 1962. I nodded. I was crying. She said, "That was the richest day of my life. Not because we had money, because we had time. And we had each other. And we weren't waiting for anything." Then she said something I'll never forget. "We should have gone to Italy when my knees still worked. We should have gone when we could still taste the wine. We should have spent less time building a future and more time living in the present. Because this is it, Arthur. This was always it." She died 3 weeks later. September 17th, 2003. I was holding her hand, and I realized I'd spent 40 years of our marriage holding a briefcase instead. After Martha died, I lived alone in our house for the first time in 42 years. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2-car garage. Everything paid off. Everything perfect. Everything empty. I'd wake up in the morning and make coffee for 1. I'd eat dinner at a table built for 6. I'd watch TV shows nobody else was watching. And I'd think about all the Tuesday nights I'd missed. All the Saturday mornings I'd traded for quarterly reports. I had money. I had success. I had a legacy at the firm. They named a conference room after me when I retired. But I didn't have Martha. I didn't have lazy Sunday mornings. I didn't have inside jokes. I didn't have the memory of holding her hand during a thunderstorm. I didn't have the feeling of falling asleep next to someone who loved me not for what I could provide, but for who I was. Do you understand what I'm saying? Money can buy a bed, but it can't buy back a Tuesday in 1994. Money can buy a vacation, but it can't buy back the feeling of your daughter's hand in yours when she was 7. Money can buy freedom, but it can't buy back the years you spent in a prison of your own making. I sat in that house, our dream house, surrounded by everything I'd sacrificed my life to acquire, and I felt like the poorest man on earth. Because wealth isn't what you own. Wealth is what you experience. And I'd spent my entire life too busy to be wealthy. So let me tell you what I wish someone had told me when I was 40. First, your life is not a rehearsal. You think you're in the building phase right now. You think the real living starts later. But this is it. This moment, right now, is your life. The dress rehearsal theory is a lie. You don't get a second take. If you want to take that trip, take a smaller version of it now. Don't wait for the luxury version in 20 years. A weekend road trip with your spouse is worth more than a first-class ticket to Paris that you take alone because they're too sick to travel. Second, presence is the most valuable currency. I see you on your lunch breaks, scrolling through your phones, looking at lives you wish you had. You think engagement is being there. But your body can be in the room while your mind is in the after. Your kids don't need you to buy them a bigger house. They need you to sit on the floor and play with them. Your spouse doesn't need a better car. They need you to look up from your phone when they're talking. Here's a practice I wish I'd done. When you come home, leave your work in the car. Literally. Close the car door and imagine your work responsibilities staying locked in the trunk. Then walk through your front door as if you're walking onto sacred ground. Because it is. Third, redefine success before it's too late. Success is not a title. It's not a bank account. It's not a square footage. Success is being able to look at your day and say, I am exactly where I want to be. Not where I'm forced to be, so I can be happy later. I was a managing partner. I had respect. I had influence. But I failed at the only job that actually mattered, being a present husband and father. What is success worth if you're successful at the wrong things? Fourth, schedule your joy like you schedule your meetings. You wouldn't miss a client meeting. You wouldn't skip a deadline. But you'll skip dinner with your family for 10 years straight because something came up. Treat the moments that matter like the non-negotiable commitments they are. Put date night with spouse on your calendar in pen. Put play with kids on your calendar with the same weight you give to a board meeting. Because I promise you, in 30 years, you won't remember the board meeting. But you'll remember whether or not you were there. Fifth, stop optimizing for comfort and start optimizing for memory. The life you're building, the afterlife, is optimized for just comfort. Big house, fancy car, financial security, and comfort is nice. But comfort doesn't create the moments you'll treasure at the end. The moments I treasure now? The uncomfortable ones. The time Martha and I got caught in a rainstorm on a walk, and we were soaking wet and laughing. The time we scraped together money for a weekend at a cheap motel, and it felt like a palace because we were together. Comfort is forgettable. Memory is priceless. Sixth, and most important, the people you love are dying. I don't say that to be morbid. I say it to be honest. Your parents are getting older. Your spouse is getting older. Your kids are growing up and will leave. Every single person you love is on borrowed time, and so are you. The question is not whether you'll lose them. The question is, will you have been there before you do? I'm 90 years old. I have everything I ever worked for. I have built so much wealth now, but I wish I would trade it all. Cough. Every cent, every trophy, every square foot of this house, to go back to being 40, tired, and broke, just so I could choose to be present, to become the person I never was. I would give anything to go back to that night when Sarah showed me her drawing and say, "You know what, sweetheart? This contract can wait. Show me what you made." But I can't go back. You can. So I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Not with me. I'll be gone soon enough. Be honest with yourself. What is one thing you are putting off until later? Is it a conversation you need to have with your spouse? A trip you've been dreaming about? A hobby you used to love? Time with your children before they grow up? I want you to write it down. Right now. In the comments, or on a piece of paper, or in your phone. Write down one thing you're waiting to do. And then I want you to ask yourself, what am I waiting for? Because I can tell you from the finish line, the after you're waiting for is a mirage. It doesn't exist. The only moment you have is this one. Don't let it slip away while you're planning for a future that never comes. I'm Arthur, and this is the afterthought. If you found even a grain of truth in what I've shared, please don't let it end here. There's so much more I need to tell you before it's too late. If you are serious about transforming your life completely, to start living in the present, to become the person many never become, hit subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, start living today, because the clock is ticking, and it doesn't stop for anyone.